A Japanese sword slashed through the tent. It severed part of Private McKinney's ear. 100 enemy soldiers surrounded his position. His 2 companions were gone. He was alone, in the dark, half awake, for the next 36 minutes. Private John McKinney killed 1 enemy soldier every 56 seconds. February 26, 1921, Woodcliff, Georgia. John Randolph McKinney was born into a farming family. In Screven County, one of the poorest parts of the state, his family worked the land: cotton, tobacco, corn. No luxuries, just hard work and harder soil. Like most boys in rural Georgia, John grew up hunting. Squirrel deer, wild turkey. Not for sport, for food. Hunting taught him patience, stillness, precision, skills that would one day save his life and the lives of every man in his company. November 23, 1942. John McKinney enlisted in the United States Army at Fort McPherson, Georgia. He was 21 years old. John completed basic training and was assigned to Company A, 123rd Infantry Regiment, 33rd Infantry Division. The 33rd Division trained extensively before heading overseas. They staged at Morotai Island in late 1944. Then, on February 10, 1945, they landed at Lingayen Gulf on Luzon, Philippines. MacArthur had returned. The liberation had begun. But the Japanese weren't giving up without a fight. From February to May 1945, the 123rd Infantry pushed through the rugged Caraballo Mountains. Dense jungle, steep ravines, hidden enemy positions. Every mile cost blood. By May 1945, John McKinney had become a seasoned soldier. Quiet, reliable, a crack shot. His hunting instinct served him well in the jungle. He knew how to move silently, how to read the terrain, how to wait. May 10, 1945, Tayabas Province, Luzon. Company A established an outpost near Dinglin Bay. Their mission was to guard the company's flank. A machine gun position was set up on a small hill. 3 men assigned to it. John McKinney was one of them. He pulled a long shift on the machine gun. Hours of staring into the darkness. The jungle always alive with sound, always threatening. When his shift ended just before dawn, John went to his nearby tent to rest. He kept his M1 Garand rifle with him as always. A soldier never goes anywhere without his weapon. John closed his eyes. What he didn't know was that while he slept, 100 Japanese soldiers were moving silently through the jungle toward his position. The vanguard slipped past the guard post. Japanese Sergeant Fukutaro Mori approached McKinney's tent. He drew his sword. and slashed through the tent flap. The blade caught John across the side of his head, severing part of his ear. Blood poured down his face. But John McKinney was already moving. Even dazed, even bleeding. The hunter's instincts kicked in immediately. John grabbed his rifle, slammed the butt into Maury's chin. The sergeant crumpled. John hit him again. Maury was finished. John burst out of the tent and saw the machine gun position swarming with enemy soldiers. 10 Japanese infantrymen had captured it. His 2 companions were gone. One had been wounded and carried away. The other had withdrawn to get help. John was completely alone. The Japanese were turning the machine gun around to fire into the American perimeter. If they got that gun operational, they'd massacre the sleeping Americans behind the line. John didn't hesitate. He charged the machine gun position, firing from the hip. 7 Japanese soldiers fell at point-blank range. 3 more he clubbed to death with his rifle, but in savage hand-to-hand combat. 10 men taken down in seconds. But the machine gun was now inoperable, damaged in the melee. John had only his M1 Garand, and the main Japanese force was coming. Wave after wave of soldiers charged his position, screaming, throwing grenades, firing knee mortars. Explosions tore up the ground around John. Shrapnel whizzed through the air. But John kept fighting. He moved quickly between positions, never staying in one place long enough to be surrounded. Always moving, always shooting. The M1 Garand holds 8 rounds. John emptied it, reloaded, emptied it again. When his ammunition ran low, he grabbed rifles from fallen enemies, loaded them, fired them, threw them aside, and grabbed another. When a Japanese soldier got too close, John didn't reach for a knife. He flipped his rifle and used it as a club. The Georgia farm boy who'd learned to hunt squirrels was now the most dangerous man in Luzon. Grenades landed near his feet. John kicked them away, or hit the dirt and let them explode, then got back up and kept shooting. The Japanese couldn't understand what they were facing. They'd sent 100 soldiers to overrun this position, but one man refused to give an inch. One man who shot as fast as he could cycle his rifle, who moved like he knew every inch of the terrain. Because he did. This was his position, his ground. And no one was taking it. 2 Japanese mortarmen set up 45 yards away. They started dropping mortar shells on John's position. Methodically, accurately, trying to blow him off the hill. John spotted them. He raised his rifle. 2 shots, 2 men. The mortar went silent. 45 yards, in the dark, under fire. Exactly as he'd hunted squirrels back home. Patience, precision, 1 shot. For 36 minutes, Private John McKinney fought 100 Japanese soldiers. Alone, in the darkness, bleeding from his ear. Running between positions. Shooting, reloading, clubbing. Always moving, never stopping. And then, as the first light of dawn crept across the jungle, American reinforcements arrived. Sergeant Al Johnson led the first men up the hill. He expected to find chaos, bodies, defeat. Instead, he found John McKinney, standing in complete control of the position. Covered in blood, exhausted, ear half severed, but standing. Johnson surveyed the area in disbelief. 38 Japanese soldiers lay dead around the machine gun position. 2 more were dead at the mortar 45 yards away. 40 dead in 36 minutes. 1 every 56 seconds. Every single man in Company A was alive because of what John had done. Johnson turned to McKinney. "How did you do this?" he asked. John shrugged. "I just kept shooting," he said. Sergeant Johnson immediately filed for the Medal of Honor. The paperwork moved quickly. On January 23, 1946, President Harry S. Truman stood in the White House Oval Office. 4 Medal of Honor recipients stood before him. John McKinney was one of them. Now promoted to sergeant. Truman placed the Medal of Honor around his neck. John stood at attention, quiet as always. The same quiet that had made him such a deadly hunter. In Georgia, and in the Philippines, his citation read in part, "By his indomitable spirit, extraordinary fighting ability, and unwavering courage in the face of tremendous odds, Private McKinney saved his company from possible annihilation and set an example of unsurpassed intrepidity." After the war, John McKinney went home to Georgia. he went back to farming. The same fields, the same soil. He rarely spoke about what happened in the Philippines. Not to his family, not to reporters, not to anyone. Some veterans came home and gave speeches, told their stories to anyone who would listen. John McKinney went back to planting crops and hunting in the Georgia woods. Quietly, humbly. The same way he'd done everything his whole life. He married, raised a family, lived a long and ordinary life. On April 4th, 1997, John Randolph McKinney died in Sylvania, Georgia. He was 76 years old. He was buried at Doubleheads Baptist Church, a small country church near where he'd been born. In 2017, the state of Georgia renamed a highway in his honor. The John R. McKinney Medal of Honor Highway. Military historians have called John McKinney the Pacific's Audie Murphy, the same impossible one-man stand, the same devastating effectiveness against overwhelming odds, the same quiet humility afterward. But while Audie Murphy became famous, John McKinney went home to plant crops. And the world forgot his name. This is what heroism looks like. Not the kind that comes from training for this exact moment, but the kind that comes from a lifetime of quiet preparation. John McKinney spent his whole life learning how to be patient, how to move in the dark, how to shoot true. He learned those skills hunting squirrels in Georgia, and he used them to save his entire company on a dark hilltop in the Philippines. A Japanese sword woke him up that morning. And for 36 minutes, John McKinney was the most dangerous man alive. He just kept shooting. If you want to hear more stories of forgotten American heroes, hit subscribe. These men deserve to be remembered.